Alrighty, so I wanted to talk about this TV show because I know I'm probably, it came out a couple of years ago, but I just recently watched it finally and felt compelled to talk about it because it's so, I wouldn't say necessarily unique, but it had this strange effect on me where I couldn't stop thinking about it, but it was in a way where I kept thinking about it because it was annoying me, and I don't have any notes or anything. I'm just going off memory. So, as you can see, I'm going to be talking about Midnight Mass. And this is a limited series, I think 7 parts, made by the same person who made The Haunting of Hill House and Haunting of Bly Manor. And for once, I was like, thank God it's not ghosts again. It's. And we're going to do spoilers. It's vampires, which they don't ever say that, but they have a unique twist on it. But here's the thing. So I thought the Haunting of Hill House was pretty alright. I thought the Haunting of Bly Manor was pretty alright. They start feeling very derivative of each other, and this one feels so like okay, like you're just doing the same shit you did in all your other series. Can we change it up a little bit? I mean, you're basically doing shot for shot the same thing, the same story. And so you have a main character who was drunk driving, accidentally killed a young girl, and so he has to live with that guilt. He goes to prison, goes back to after prison, goes back to his family's home island, fishing island, somewhere off the mainland of the United States, and it heavily focuses on him for I would say probably I say the first 5 episodes of 7. That's slightly a problem I had, not because it's they can't do it. It's I mean these are hour-long episodes, 7 hours total. 5 hours of it is spent like with this character, and then you fucking kill him, and then it really just feels like it's rushed to the end after that. So there's so many scenes. I mean, it in the very beginning there's like subtle hints where you see the vampire and stuff, where you're going, ooh, he's doing the spooky, like it's a shot, but in the background is the vampire, just like in the other Haunting of Bly Manor and stuff. Oh, the ghost is in the background. Cool shots, but then you start going, okay, we're 3 hours in. What's going on? Like, what are we doing? It's when someone tells me something's a slow burn, I'm not expecting it to be this bad of a slow burn. I mean, so bad where you start going like, this couldn't have been a movie. This couldn't have been 4 parts. Cause something that this show is heavily guilty of is pretentious monologuing, where it's like, don't get me wrong, of course you and your buddies probably have a conversation about like what happens after you die and things like that. But it gets to a point where you go, wow, most of these episodes are just like philosophical Reddit mod armchair site like dialogue, where you kind of get the idea where you go, okay, maybe people would have a conversation about that, but not in the way you're saying it. And it just comes off so like the director's like, oh, look at how I'm explaining things. Like it's so, you know, boundless and blah, blah, blah. I just, I, the Muslim sheriff, when he goes on his rant about how people, treated him wrong and racist stuff, I liked that monologue, but it was done at the worst time. He monologues to like one of the few people who don't treat him like shit, and he goes off on a whole ass rant. And I'm like, that should have been saved for a moment where he could have said that to the actual ignorantly racist, bigoted people in the town. I feel like it would have had a little bit more impact. Instead, he goes off on this lady, and you're like, it makes sense what you're saying, but I feel like this is not the scene for that. It's just kind of, Um, they do, and mind you, I'm all over the place because I don't have any notes. Like, we just watched it last night. I'm just kind of going off the top of my head, but I love the idea of the vampire where he happens to obviously turn a religious person, and so he's able to get him to basically trick everyone that the vampire is an angel. And seeing him wearing like the cloak thing, walking in the church was pretty spooky. Um, they maybe it's a nitpick, but the whole, the priest was walking to Jerusalem, the road to Damascus, and then, there were such high winds. He got lost from his tourism party, and the high winds uncovered a ancient cave in the ground, and he went into it because he's, has dementia, and there's a vampire down there, and in my head, I'm like, how has that vampire lived this whole time without blood? I don't know, and then obviously he smuggled somehow the vampire in like a little chest all the way back to America somehow. Obviously, suspension of disbelief. I mean, we're talking about vampires, so sure. I just kind of liked what they did in The Strain, where the master was brought on the plane in the mainland, and like what looked like just soil, like, oh, like we're transferring soil from this country to study on. But no, there's a fucking vampire in there. And I think with the master, it's like those ancient vampires, they can't necessarily die, but they just go into like a very, very weakened state. But this vampire, I mean, was fucking jumping around and fucking full force hitting you like a brick, so who knows? But they go into conversations about like, oh, well, you're religious, what are your thoughts about what happens when you die? Well, I'm not religious, what are your thoughts? And it's interesting, but i I don't know, we didn't need that over and over again, and a lot of the scenes are like, ooh, I feel, something's making me uncomfortable, or like, how do I get past my past trauma? It was just to me it felt like they just kept redoing the same scene over and over again. And then at the end of episode 5, I think, when the main character dies, it just does a huge tonal shift where it's like, okay, we're on the last 2 episodes. We're just going to vampires attack the town. Oh my god, blood, murder, oh, action, like, he's got the gun and he's shooting, and it went from 5 episodes of slow burn nothing, human drama, to just full on just vampires terrorizing a town, eating everyone. I was like, I don't know. I just felt like this could have been a 4-part max. First 2 parts, the quiet whatever. Last 2 parts, the night falls and blah blah blah. Um, they do interesting things where it's like the vampires are still sentient. You're still yourself. Obviously, when it comes to the bloodlust, most people can't control it. It's not like The Strain where the master can truly just control all the vampires, but some of the stuff, the main preacher, who's actually the bad guy, when the main character gets turned into a vampire, he's like, yeah, just go out, dude. Like, oh, it'll be fine. And then the next day, he's like, oh my god, he actually like left some cryptic letters for his family. Oh my god, like this isn't good. It's like, what were you thinking would happen? And there is a really annoying religious lady, just like The Mist. Great job on that actress. God, they make you hate her. Um, I am curious, not to get too much into it, what a person of that faith, I think Catholic, would think of the show watching it. Because it really, really goes into like indoctrination and culty vibes and stuff like that. So I would be curious what someone of that faith would say. Um, They leave the vampire's fate ambiguous, of course, and it's what's crazy is the first 5 episodes feel like slow burn, then the last two feel like it's just bam, bam, skipping, skipping, skipping. Let's get this over with, done. Until there's one last annoying ass monologue where I'm like, I'm already checked out because it's basically a character's dying and it goes back to like, well, my thoughts of death and blah blah blah. So it almost starts replaying that same conversation, but this time it's different. But it's like she's still making the same point about every 3 sentences, but it kept going. I was like, God bless. And they kind of do a complete shift too, you know. The main preacher who brought the vampire who's been poisoning the whole town. Magically, he's like, I actually did this because I wanted my plot twist. My daughter, who I never got to talk to or raise because I couldn't because I'm a pastor or whatever, who is the daughter of this old lady in the town who starts drinking the vampire blood that he gives her as like the wine and cracker thing for the communion, and she starts getting younger and younger, and he was like, "Oh, I wanted us to live together forever," and he's like, "My goal was to just turn you," but he doesn't really explain why. Then he turned the whole fucking town. Um, and they almost try to make him like a tragic hero at very end because it's like, oh, there's even worse vampires now than him. I'm like, I don't like that. I don't like that you're trying to make it seem like he's all of a sudden kind of the anti-hero good guy. Like, no. No, 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 no. Absolutely not. Um, it's, I don't know. I like the take that they did of the vampires and how they act and stuff. I just felt like this could have been so much shorter. And I don't want to have to keep repeating myself, but basically, this should have been shorter. It should have been more cohesive and not drag on the Reddit mod cringe dialogue. And I think it would have been much more enjoyable. The acting was good um, from mostly everybody. The effects look good. The vampire looks scary. So, yeah. I guess that's it for this. Basically, just want to talk about like it's an interesting thing, like a vampire story, but the first 5 episodes are kind of like holy shit. Like you're kind of doing the same shit, and then the last 2 episodes is just the pure vampire. You know, I feel it reminded me of 30 Days of Night, but if 30 Days of Night was dragged out to 7 hours, so I guess I could just go watch 30 Days of Night. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this video. I just want to talk about Midnight Mass. Obviously, if you think I'm, wrong, think I'm stupid, my opinions, you agree with me, whatever, more than welcome to discuss in the comments. So, as always, I appreciate you watching. I'm out.